Thank you, Katie, for that very fine speech in proposition of the motion. Order. Thank you. We now turn our attention to the last speaker of side opposition and the closing speaker for tonight, Mr. Oliver Lloyd. Oliver is a first-year student reading law at Trinity College. He won the right to speak via open audition. Oliver, you have the ears of the House.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a great honour to be speaking here tonight. If you look at your debate card, you will probably notice two things. Firstly, unfortunately, my bio is fairly short, but please reserve your judgment at least for the next 10 minutes. The second thing you'll notice is that I'm obviously opposing the motion in favour of Blair. So my next statement might surprise you. I am not here to make a defence of Tony Blair. This does not mean he is indefensible. Far from it. My fellow opposition speakers have made strong cases, and they need to be made. The proposition have made compelling cases that Blair has in some ways damaged the fabric of the United Kingdom. Not one of them has made the case that he has broken it. This is an untenable position. Katie, you talked about the damage Blair has done to the Constitution. I'd like to make a couple of rebuttals there. The Supreme Court that Blair created was firstly largely cosmetic. The House of Lords Appellate Committee was acted previously in essentially the same way as the Supreme Court did afterwards. You talked about leaving the Supreme Court to its own devices. I think there's another word for that. I think it's called separation of powers. Furthermore, all of the constitutional outsourcings of power that you outlined can be reversed by Act of Parliament, and no government since Blair decided to do so, yet they could have. I want to now talk about what this debate is and what it isn't. To start with the latter, it is not an analysis of whether Blair's premiership was net positive or net negative for Britain. So what is it? The question at hand is whether Blair broke Britain. This is a very serious accusation. For it to be true, two facts must be proved. Firstly, that Britain is currently broken, or at least that it was broken and has since been fixed. If this is held true, the second fact to be proved is that Blair was the one who broke it. More specifically, that Blair was the sole, or at least the main, causal agent behind it. Before I continue, I'd like to invite any POIs to challenge that premise.
Point of information.
Go for it.
We heard earlier that it's just vibes that it's broken. And I wonder, have you tried to get an NHS appointment? Have you tried to drive over potholes? Have you tried to get a house recently? Probably not you, as a first year. But it's pretty broken to me, but I'd love to hear why you think it's not broken.
I think our definitions of broken differ quite substantially. I'm not saying those aren't flaws or problems. They are big flaws or problems with Britain, but they, in my view, do not amount to broken. And I'll come on to that shortly. So I believe that the motion fails on both of those counts. But I will remind you, it only needs to fail on one of them. Britain can be unbroken, despite Blair, and it can be broken, but not by Blair. A broken nation is one that is wholly dysfunctional, with no proper public services, the spread of extreme poverty and disease, no true functioning political system, with no functional executive, or one that wields absolute power against the interests of its citizens, without the rule of law or access to justice, with inequality under the law. Arguments can and have been made that the fabric of Britain is fraying in some of these areas. This may well be true. Britain is not perfect. It is perhaps far from perfect, but it is not broken. Some nations are broken. Sudan, with recent horrific and underreported massacres, 2,000 civilians killed in one day in the city of El Fasher. That is a broken nation. Afghanistan and Syria, following decades of war, sectarian violence and cruel regimes, and misguided or at least failed Western interventions. Those are broken. Yemen and Myanmar, torn apart from within by civil war, are broken. Iraq, undoubtedly and rightly the gravest charge against Tony Blair, was a broken nation in 2003 and still is today. Palestine today is broken. But even war-torn Ukraine is not broken. It is under immense stress, but it is holding together and staying in the fight. And Britain is definitely not broken. To say so is to trivialise the plight of these truly broken nations. This is not to belittle the flaws of this nation. But the arguments advanced do not amount to a broken nation. Making this argument takes for granted all that we have, and we have a lot. We have a country with free at the point of provision healthcare system. We have roads that generally work, no food shortages, clean running drinking water, the rule of law and a fair justice system, a strong and long-standing Go for it.
Just to echo my dear friend Arrow there, are these things which you're mentioning now not becoming more broken? Worse roads, worse healthcare outcomes, broken healthcare outcomes, broken justice systems where we're seeing people let out of prison and where we're seeing a conviction rate for things like sexual assault, the worst they've been in our history. Is that not brokenness for you? I know it's not Sudan.
Please be brief.
I think you've got the wrong tense. Those things might amount to a breaking Britain, but they are not yet a broken Britain. Sorry, I don't have time. Thanks, though. A word needs to be said about Blair's foreign policy. Iraq was a terrible mistake with catastrophic consequences for the people of Iraq. It was not catastrophic for the people of Britain. There is a major delta between the extent of harm suffered in Iraq and the extent of harm that fed back into Britain as a result. Iraq has a very limited application to the motion at hand, which relates to Britain specifically. I may not yet have convinced you, and that's absolutely fine. Even if you maintain as fact that Britain is broken, to walk through the right-hand door, you must be convinced of the truth of the second fact, that Blair was the one that broke it. This cannot be true, because put very simply, Blair at the very least did some good for Britain, and there were many other factors that did a lot of bad for Britain. Investment in public services shot up in Blair's 10 years. Social reforms, same-sex civil partnerships, minimum wage, bringing the constitution into the 21st century. I'm not going to talk too much more about the good Blair did for Britain. He did a lot of good, but my fellow speakers in the opposition have made those cases strongly, and I don't have time. Indeed, the proposition have made their cases that Blair did more harm than good. But the focus needs to be maintained on the extreme and binary framing of the motion. It does not matter if Blair did more harm than good for the purposes of the motion. It simply matters whether or not he did a catastrophic level of harm to amount to be... Sure.
Is your case that everything about Britain needs to be broken for us to call it broken?
At least a majority of the elements, the components of Britain need to be broken, and probably higher than that. Sorry, I don't have time. There have also been a few other negative factors at play since 2007. Most immediately, the 2008 financial crisis and the economic disruption that followed. Austerity, that's a whole other debate, but one that quite clearly politicians other than Blair were involved in, the Tories under Cameron and May. COVID-19 strangled the economy and bit deep into the National Health Service. Blair was not responsible for any of this. Brexit took out 5% of GDP and reduced tax revenues by 40 billion for no benefit. We are in a much worse position now in terms of costs and standards of living as a result. Blair was in favour of staying in the European Union. Again, in my view, these factors might have damaged Britain, but they haven't broken it. But even if you think they have, even alongside Blair's role, the very existence of these clear-cut factors, by definition, dilutes the causal responsibility that can be attributed to him. Can you, in good conscience, walk through that right-hand door and hold Blair solely responsible for the entirety of the damage for Britain, when it was also COVID, 2008, the austerity, the energy crisis from the war in Ukraine, and perhaps, sorry, I don't have time, and perhaps 100 other factors at play. Now, you're probably thinking at this point that this is just a pedantic, aspiring lawyer talking about semantics. No POIs, that's a rare bit of agreement. But anyway, semantics are important. After all, you've all got to walk through one of those 3 doors at the end of this debate, and you're not answering some abstract, generic question of whether or not Blair was good for Britain. It is not really an expression of opinion, either. You are answering the specific finding of fact as to whether or not Blair broke Britain. This contains 2 facts that must be true. Britain is broken, and Blair broke it. I've made my case regarding each of these, that neither fact is true. But I urge you to answer these questions of fact, sorry, this is closing, not with emotional or tribalist instincts, and ideally not just with your feet dragging you to the bar, against your will, of course, but rather to answer it with rational and logical analysis. You are all members of a jury, and on trial stands one man being blamed as the one cause of damage to the whole nation and its millions of people. Please do not see this as a legalistic approach to a political issue. It is not. Reality matters, and it's sliding out of view. The motion is binary and extreme, and for the proposition to support it is to propound populist and sensational rhetoric which seeks to divide and rule and only serves to perpetuate and reinforce the hyperpolarization afflicting this country. It is at best a naive oversimplification. The arguments by the proposition cast aside complexity and pigeonhole the debate into a single demagogic statement. It is straight from the Trumpian playbook. Play to people's fears with catastrophic proclamations, select one person or political entity as the scapegoat, and present yourself as the solution to all ills. Such a statement represents the very worst of the playing of the political game. It takes for granted all that we have and trivializes the plight of truly broken nations. It is defeatist and may well be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It fails at every hurdle of logical challenge. Britain is not broken, and Blair has not broken it. Thank you.
Order, thank you. My thanks to Oliver for that fine speech in opposition of the motion and a fitting end to tonight's debate. Okay, before we move to voting, we're just going to go very quickly through a number of very short announcements. The first one being, who wins the floor speech prize? Yes, the winner for this evening is the first round abstention speaker, Lucy from Homerton. Come and find us afterwards in the bar and we'll explain the details to you. All right, so a number of very quick things that are happening just as an overview of the week. On Sunday is the Black Tie Jazz Night Cabaret, which is now sold out, which is very exciting, which is happening on Sunday evening, I believe, at 8 p.m. On Tuesday, the union is delighted to welcome the 48th American Vice President, Mike Pence, at 4 p.m. On Wednesday, we meet again in the library with Richard J. Murphy for a fireside chat. And then on Thursday, the House convenes for the following motion: this House believes Britain should leave the ECHR. A couple of other things that I think are also worth bearing in mind. If you were disappointed you couldn't get tickets to the Black Tie Jazz Cabaret Night, do note that the Fetish N is taking place. It's a techno night with some DJs in the Union Cellars. So if you are interested in coming along, please do get a ticket because they're selling really nicely. The Cambridge Union Winter Ball is on Tuesday, December 2nd. The theme is a cowboy Christmas, a southern homecoming. It's set to be a really exciting event. There is a bucking bull. So please do come along if you like other such forms of livestock. But it's set to be a wonderful evening. So please do get your tickets if you haven't yet already. They are also selling very quickly and promisingly. Please, we're nearly there. Please do remember that when we close for tonight's debate, please don't swarm the speakers at the front. Please go to the bar, and we will come to the bar afterwards for you to meet the speakers and also to go through and hear the results of tonight's vote. In this House, we're about to move to voting. In this House, we vote by our feet. Tellers, please take your places. In a second, when called upon to do so, please walk through the doors that correspond with your vote on the motion. Ayes on this side, abstentions through the middle, and nays here. Thank you all very much, and see you in the bar.